There were a few of these that were like really unfamiliar to me. I think the ones that like low key caught me off guard were the James Bond ones.
That guy fell forever.
Those ones caught me so off guard.
Yeah, he just like, but like the scene was too long. It wasn't just the dummy. It was just, it watched it fall and then fall and then fall a bit more. And just when you thought it was over, it fell more.
I should have known with a Roger Moore movie that there would be something wrong with it.
Welcome back to I'll See Myself Out. My name's Dan Leishow.
I'm Ryan.
I'm Terry.
And I'm Norm Reynolds.
Consider these your only warnings.
There will be foul language.
There'll be lots and lots of spoilers.
And there's going to be foul language.
Today on I'll See Myself Out, we're going to be talking about the 8 worst dummy uses in a movie. Number 8, Death Wish 3. The use of the cab fall. This guy falls from a building, hits the top of a cab, and crumples like only a dummy could. Now, either the actor himself is broken into many pieces, or they use the dummy and they expected us to not notice. I found this thing funny, only for the fact that as he hits the car, it almost looks like he's got about 6 knees. But he ate that car like with his legs, like he fell like Gumby and then folded.
I love the way that he was balled up, like he was almost like hunched over and ready to spring back up, but obviously he didn't.
You know, that carnival game where they had the frogs on the lily pads and you're trying to hammer them? That to me is what this guy looked like after he hit.
I think this starts things off in the direction of the ones that I like the most in terms of scenes with dummies. Not when the dummies are trying really hard to actually look like people or like even getting close. Just when the dummies are so haphazardly used in a scene, you almost have to look around the room while watching it to see if anybody else noticed how bad that was. I think this is the first one that really hits me that way, which is probably going to be relative to the list that I put on there. It's so brutal when they hit and like the limbs are just all over the fucking place and it's like not even close to being the mechanics of a human body. You have to respect how brazen Hollywood was at a certain point to not give a fuck about that.
They were counting on like the poor quality, right, of what you were watching it on.
When this one hit the car, I also thought the best way to describe it for me would be like a blow-up doll that was filled with water.
Number 7 comes from a scene from the movie Broken Arrow. John Travolta and the other guy, who doesn't really matter, are fighting on this train, and there's another train on the track, and these two trains are going toward each other. The character that's fighting against John Travolta punches him a bunch, and the guy jumps out of the train just as the other train hits it, and the only thing that is propelled because it wasn't tied down was this unit. It might have been a bomb, I don't know, and it harpoons him like a giant harpoon.
I think the thing that's so weird about this one is that I think the movie put so much energy into making all of the other, like the practical effects and everything look so believable. It was clearly actually shot on like a moving train and everything, but when they did the scene, it was like the doll, it didn't even seem like it acted human. It felt anticlimactic almost because nothing like happened.
So the dummy folded around this projectile like a baseball bat hitting a towel.
It was weird how it ragdolled. It was like super bizarre. It was like they ran out of money at that point of the movie. Like imagine that they had like a rainy day jar, but it was just labeled like Travolta Fund. And like somebody at the end of the movie was like unscrewing it, reaching in, they're like, we're out. Sorry, use the shitty dummy. And they just were like, nobody will notice.
There's a wig on the mannequin. I slowed down the scene again and again. I watched this about 6 times. You actually watch the wig on the mannequin lift up and flail around as he's getting launched away.
I think also like an element that makes this one such a tough pill to swallow is that the shot right before they show the doll is like John Travolta looking so fucking confident in his role. He's like, I'm fully committed to this character dying right now. And then they're just like, yeah, great job, John. See ya. And then they were like, use the shitty dummy. And then like, they just fucking were like, let's just wrap. It's been a long day.
I've got 2 things to say about this scene. First one is that look in Travolta's eyes. I think what he's thinking at that moment is, this fixes everything after Battlefield Earth. That's what that look in his eyes is. And then the second thing that I can't wrap my head around, and I'm sorry, I know this is about dummies. So Christian Slater jumps out of the train. Midair, he turns around and points the remote as if it's fucking infrared. You've got a detonator for a nuclear warhead, and it's got an infrared tech built into it as opposed to some kind of radio signal.
Dan, this is the 90s. You had to point the clicker at the thing to make it work, okay? This was early TV remote technology.
If you needed to be in range for a nuclear warhead to go off with a remote, oh my God, it doesn't make any sense.
That movie's like a kind of an unspoken classic because it's got so many brutal scenes in it.
Number 6 on our worst dummies in movies episode is from The Last Crusade. The scene where the tank goes over the cliff and one of the Nazi generals Indiana rolls is left to go down with the tank. While the tank is plummeting, you see him screaming, and then as it pulls back to do an aerial shot of the impact, you see the dummy flopping around as the tank falls apart, and they've attached the hands of the dummy to the tank. So as it's going, it's as if he just can't bring himself to let go of the tank as he's made an impact. It's terrible, but that's my favorite Indiana Jones. So everybody gets one. This one gets one. There's your one.
There's something about the practical effects era where like you want to be forgiving. Like there's so many things you want to overlook because at least they actually made an effort to make things be real. But that tank one was kind of a tough pill to swallow during that movie.
And you know what? The only reason I give it a pass is because I had to watch it 2 times at least. Because of the way that they shot that particular scene, I couldn't see the dummy at all the first time around. I was like, what am I looking for? It's like, oh my God, there's the dummy right there, round 2.
I can get behind and understand the guy shitting himself and hanging on for dear life. I think he would have wanted to go inside the tank, try to save himself, but nope, sure as shit, dummy's held on square and tight.
This kind of reminds me of the first time Dan ever asked me to fluff him. When I tried to let go, he just took all the skin off my palms. So, I mean, sometimes you just don't know how to let go.
Not my fault if the skin on my dick can peel a potato.
Number 5 on our list is a scene from the film Poltergeist where one of the characters starts having these hallucinatory visions and then just kind of seems to start losing themselves looking in the mirror and tearing their face apart. You can kind of tell when you start watching the clip that there's something not quite right about the way that the person's face is structured. You can tell it's a doll, you can tell it's a dummy, but there's just something about the scene that you don't see coming with how graphic and how deep they really go in this scene with tearing the face apart, to the point where like the character's literally pulling off chunks of it, the cheeks and the nose, and you can see the skull and shit. I'm sure that was probably pretty scary for its era. It's like glaringly hard to ignore now when you think about how far horror movies have come. And I guess in a way, it also kind of still holds up because even though it looks fake, it's still pretty disturbing because not a lot of movies would do that kind of thing still now.
I love the effect that they had the jello falling off it. I think that's what fucked with my head a bit on it. But as soon as you see the skeleton underneath, it's just like, oh, you went there.
Well, it's not just the fact that it's tearing the face apart, it's that the scene is shot so that it's showing the character tearing the face, the flesh and the muscles off the face, and then throwing it into the sink. It's weird that they're also trying to show you that it's being disposed of.
The part that I couldn't handle out of this whole scene was the angling of the hands coming up when it obviously wasn't the person's hands.
You don't see the shoulders moving, so it's just these 2 puppet arms tearing the face apart. Yeah.
The only thing they could have done to make a puppet that bad look better is film it like the final episode of Game of Thrones. Like just fucking turn the lights off.
Number 4, the Fugitive dam dive. Harrison Ford, Kimbo, decides he needs to jump to save his life in a very high fall. As he jumps out of the dam, it quickly zooms out to showing the dummy falling in an awkward way.
Do you think that a lot of people got really bad diving advice from watching movies from the 80s into the 90s? Imagine like watching movies growing up and your parents were like, yeah, whatever, leave him, he's fine, or she's fine. And then you go to the swimming pool for the first time and like you just throw yourself off like a movie dummy with your arms flailing everywhere, falling neck first into the community pool.
The reason why I found this one so bad came down to the fact that, first of all, the director is trying to prove that he was able to survive this dam jump. They use a dummy because it's too dangerous for the actor to do this stunt or anybody to do this stunt, but yet somehow we're supposed to believe they survived the fall.
Well, if you think about it, a dam is just kind of like a big water slide.
There's lots of friction there, I gotta say. And I feel like because of the wind would like pull you back into the dam and you'd hit it with such force and you'd bounce and come back and just do this all the way down. Again, not a dam doctor.
It's just kind of like advanced parkour, really. Breaking into our top 3, we've got a scene from Damien, Omen II. This woman gets her eyes pecked out by a raven, stumbles into the road, and gets hit by a transport truck. When I say hit by a transport truck, a dummy got thrown at the top of one, and then a few wheels drove over it.
This one made me laugh so hard when I saw it. It looks like some big crew guy, like basically just like, yeah, a truck would throw her. So he just picks it up, throws it off to the side, and the dummy just flails.
Can you imagine what it would take for a person not to be like smashed to the front of the truck or drawn under it and instead like fly up and like completely miss the actual transport truck and hit the trailer?
My thought is like if a truck is going as fast as it was, you would assume that it was at least gonna almost break something, not just like throw her.
I saw another movie that had a very similar situation with a truck and a little boy, and I mean the little boy didn't hit the back of the truck and he's lighter. What gives? Yes, it's Pet Sematary. I want some continuity in my bad movies.
We also did Pet Sematary. You can see that up here.
I feel like the thing that fucked me up so much about this clip was that I was expecting like her body to basically just blow up. I can't imagine that there's anything left of like a human being once they get hit by an 18-wheeler. But the fact that like the shot shows her like strewn oddly across like the windshield is like what really like threw me off. The way that she traveled like 20 feet in the air and was completely like her body was like unharmed.
So I've got two things to say about this. One, it would have been so much scarier if they just didn't even show her getting hit and just implied it. Why wouldn't you just look at the footage and go, no, we're not using it. People will know she got hit. It's fine. Like, it would have been way scarier. And two, this scene inspired me to want to do an episode completely on sound effects, because the sound that she made when she hit the back of that trailer, it was just this like fucking cartoon sound effect. As soon as I saw that and heard that sound, I started noticing it in all of the other clips that we were watching. We got to do a whole episode. If you want to see an episode on the worst sound effects in movies, let us know in the comments. I thought they took a hose to like a stack of cardboard boxes and then hit it with a stick. That's what it sounded like to me when she hit that. Number 2 on our list is from Friday the 13th. It's the scene where the dummy gets its head crushed by Jason. Young lady comes out of the cabin, is looking for her friend, and he's just around the corner being subdued by Jason. As she goes inside, Jason proceeds to crush his head and an eyeball pops right out of the socket. I don't even know where to begin on this one.
That was actually my favorite part of any of the scenes we watched, was the comedic relief of that eyeball popping out. It was added in a way that like made it look like it was jumping at the audience a little bit. It made me wonder like if they were experimenting with 3D in movies at that time and if that was something they were going for.
Yeah, it took me back a little bit. I was like, when it flew at the screen, I was like, is this intentional?
Apart from it looking not real in the least, I was still impressed with how they got the eyeball to pop out directly towards the screen. I want to know how they did that. Like, it didn't look real, it didn't look cool, but still the mechanics of it, I don't understand. How did they get it to like fly towards the screen?
I felt like that was added in, like it wasn't actually practical.
Oh, so it wasn't in camera. You think they did it afterwards?
I didn't study it thoroughly, but to me it looked like it was added in like in post.
Still, I feel like at that time it might have been a feat to even do that.
This is one of those scenes that I just imagine that the person who is being replaced by the dummy is being a complete pain in the ass, asking about what its motivation is as Jason is crushing his head. And the guy goes, "You're just gonna die. You're gonna die. Oh, fucking get the dummy and just put him in there."
He sees the dummy's eye pop out and he's like, whoo! Dodged a bullet there.
I don't think you can really fake that kind of a special effect anymore. We've been kind of like spoiled with Game of Thrones, seeing some on-screen head crushings now. When I started watching that and I saw his head was getting crushed, I was expecting there to be just fucking brains and blood everywhere. Just kind of looked like the way a pop can kind of crinkles under pressure.
Except you saw springs and oil.
You know those squeeze toys? I half expected when he squeezed it was gonna go hee.
It's just the eyes go whoop, whoop, whoop.
All right, so after voting on all of our favorite bad dummy scenes in all of the movies, our number 1 spot is taken by Zombie Holocaust. I've never seen this movie, but after having seen the clip that I did today, I don't know that I've ever seen a worse use for a dummy in a fucking movie up until now. In the particular scene of this movie, I guess a hospital patient is being kind of guided through a hallway. The scene like kind of actually has a little bit of tension built into it because it's shot in that sort of like, let's really take our time with all of the different shots in it. So this character is being guided through the hallway, looks at the window, and it kind of shows his reaction that you see is building up to this thought. And immediately you know that this fucker is going to jump through the window, takes a running leap through the window. For the scene when the character's falling, they obviously use a dummy. And just when you think it's bad enough that the dummy is doing what most dummies tend to do when they're dropped from like 4 or 5 stories up, this dummy crashes to the ground and its arm pops off. We've sat through Battlefield Earth, and I should be pretty used to limbs flying in different directions, but that was a fucking bad one.
I find with the icing on the cake on this one is that they scroll back to the guy who's laying on the ground, who's obviously just jumped, and he's fully intact. Like, that's the icing on the cake.
Ryan, I almost feel like you didn't do it enough justice when you said it popped off, because like it didn't just pop off. His arm like just careened minimum 10 feet. It was like stomping on a water bottle and the cap flying off.
See, the mistake I think they made here is that they didn't use a dummy. They used a mannequin. They put a dress on a mannequin. So in addition to the arm popping off or careening, as you so eloquently put, the mannequin also fell like this, just straight. It didn't have any flailing. It was just like, woo!
I wonder what the mannequin cost them, because they probably could have used like a watermelon and saved some money, because it would have been equally as fucking believable. If there's anything that these movies have taught us, it's that it's better to go full tilt into not trying to make it real at all, rather than trying to make it pass. They could have put ketchup on the ground and left the bottle on the ground in the shot.
Yeah, so if there's anything we've learned about this entire episode is that if you're gonna have a shitty dummy, just don't. Just imply that whatever bad happened to the dummy, just imply that it's happened instead of showing it.
Yeah, I mean, I think I have a new appreciation for practical effects. I've always kind of liked the look of like the way that Steven Spielberg and George Lucas did in so many of the movies throughout the 60s and 70s and the 80s. There's something about that era where they were using dummies and practical effects where they were right on the edge where they maybe should have just let it go. Should have just got rid of those shots. Waited another 5 or 6 years for their next movie until they actually had something they could work with.
And no top 8 list is complete without an honorable mention.
The honorable mention for this list comes from the sci-fi horror Bad Taste. This guy gets roundhouse kicked off of a steep embankment, and the dummy that they use is in a crouched position, like a wrestler, and it just tumbles backwards. And you can tell there's some good weight to it because it's got a bit and like a firm structure because it's got some bounce like a person might, but it's not collapsing. It's just staying in this rigid rolling shape. It was like rolling a tire down a hill. And after it's done tumbling for a little bit, it hits a rock and it just splats. It's all CGI, but it's like somebody sledgehammered an extra stuffed pizza pocket.
This was a reject pizza pocket commercial. That was a ridiculous shot. Yeah, it wasn't until 80% of the way through the roll that it started collapsing. That was the most rigid dummy I think I've seen in any movie next to the mannequin. We'd like to thank Brock Street Espresso. If COVID wasn't a thing, we'd be there filming right now. You can check them out. They're located in Whitby, Ontario. They're open for takeout only at the moment. They've got amazing coffee from Propeller out in Toronto. Go ahead and look them up. They do, you can order 5-pound bags right from their store, and that'll set you up for a little while. Weather the storm, you know what I'm saying?
I also like to thank Manantler. They give us triple, double, extra, double, triple tasty beer, and they're a little Bowmanville brewery. You can order all over Ontario. I miss you.
So we're gonna continue giving you content every single week, but we're moving the podcast to a 2-week format, so we'll see this particular show every 2 weeks. Meanwhile, we'll be filling up the subsequent weeks with lots of other fun things that we've been itching to do. Next week, you can catch us doing the worst sound effects.
If you like this, don't forget to hit the like button, hit the subscribe button and the bell to see more content when we come out with it, and have yourself a wonderful day. On us.
On us, he says. On us. See yourself out.
Have you ever had that dream where you're falling out of a plane and you're just falling forever? You have that time to realize that, oh shit, I'm dying, and then you get over the fact that you're dying and you're like, okay, can the ground just come already? And then you keep falling, and then you're just like tapping your foot in the sky, hoping for it to come sooner, and then you realize that you're in a dream and you're like, well, fuck. That's kind of how that scene felt like it.
It's funny you should bring that up because I've heard there's some scientific debate about that specific dummy fall where he felt for such a long time. And the hypothesis is that he felt for so long, he was able to become sentient for long enough to learn how to project his feeling onto random people's dreams. And I think that's why we have falling dreams now. Science.
Norb, you should spend less time on the internet, buddy.
Hey. Has Google ever steered me wrong? According to my Google search, it is right on the money every time.
Imagine Norm suspiciously dies, and then it's just his last will is just like, delete my Google search history. Everybody's like, what the fuck is that?